Welcome back to the Sovereign Table, my sovereignties. My voice is a little raspy today, but we're going to go through this. As a reminder, this is a space for women who are done performing for belonging, those that are done proving their worth through endurance, and let God restore what survival rearranged. This podcast is not self-help. This is not hustle theology with scripture sprinkled on top. This is restoration. Slow, holy, confronting, and rooted in Jesus Christ. So take a breath. You don't need to carry this episode. Just sit at the table. As I was going through what this episode is going to be and sitting with Christ and going through all of this, you guys know I love giving you the background, the insight, right? You guys know that I absolutely love sharing that with you. And one of the things that was very, 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 very clear is that there was gaps. And those gaps were on purpose. There was a lot of things that I was throwing at everyone. And the prayer is that y'all caught it. I get this sense that it was not caught. How perfect that it wasn't caught, because then this episode was created. This episode was birthed. This episode that touches on something so vital that we so often are blind to. And we are, what's the word that I'm thinking of? That we are desperate to keep alive. Most of us are walking around saying that we are obedient, that we are discerning, that we are restoring, when really all we're doing is controlling. And the thing is that we're not controlling because we're power hungry. We're controlling because rest has never felt safe. Many of us learned early on that if we didn't manage things, anticipate needs, stay one step ahead, or hold everything together, things would fall apart. Anyone else relate to that? Because I know I did. So what happens in that case? Pretty simple. Really, not easy, but simple. What happens is that we start calling control wisdom. We start calling overfunctioning maturity, and exhaustion becomes a normal way of living. But hear me very clearly, sister. Hear me, please. Just because something kept you alive does not mean it was meant to lead you, because control comes with a cost. And this is the cost that we are not talking about. Control always promises safety. I need to say that again. Control will always promise safety. What it doesn't tell you is that it's also charging you interest. Bet y'all didn't know what you were coming for today, but we know now. Cheers. Be sure to drink your tea, your juice, your coffee, or your water, because we're going in really deep today. And I'm going to repeat that again. Control always promises safety, but it quietly charges interest. And in that interest, it costs you your tenderness, your presence, your joy, your trust, your ability to give and receive love, your sovereignty, your agency, your authority. And eventually, it costs you rest. Now, I'm not talking about sleep. I'm not talking about an R&R or going to a spa for a day. I'm not talking your sleep. I'm not talking your physical moment of sleeping and resting. Because rest requires trust, and control is what we reach for when trust feels dangerous. Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus never shames the weary. He invites them. But notice this, in the invitation of the weary, he does not remove responsibility. He reorders it to take on his yoke is to share the weight. However, when we are in control, control literally refuses the yoke and carries the load alone. Some of us don't need less responsibility. Some of us are taking on the wrong responsibility in order to remain in control and calling it going to Christ. It's not. You don't need more responsibility. You need the right responsibility. We were not all designed to carry the same responsibility and to carry the same burden. That is not how it works. Stop taking on other people's burdens and responsibilities because those are not right for you. Those are right for them and them only. In Genesis 1:27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. The Hebrew word, reminder, if you have not listened to the episode image bearing, the Hebrew word for image here is selem, representation. But to live in alignment with that image is Betselem. And that's functioning from shared nature, not self-generated power, not of our own strength and striving. Yes, we're all uniquely and wonderfully made. No two of us are the same, but there is one thing that is in us that is the same, and that is the image of God. We are made in his likeness. And if we are made in his likeness, that means our responsibility, the one that was designed for us to carry, was designed for us to carry with him. He didn't say that he made us in his image and in his likeness to take on all the crap from everybody else and to carry everybody else's responsibility and to try on all these hats of other people and be like, oh, let me try your backpack on or let me try your hat on. No, that's not being in his image and in his likeness. That is not loving our brethren. That is not loving thy enemy. That is saying, I don't trust you, God. That is saying, I don't trust you, Jesus. So I'm going to take that responsibility away from them because I can do it better, because I can fix it. That is not image bearing. That is killing yourself. When God asked us to go to him, come to me, all who are weary and burdened. Take his yoke, for it's light. The minute we start taking away responsibilities from other people, we are in control. And at this point, our image bearing now collapses into performance. We're not in discernment. We're not in our calling. We're not in our mandate. And we are not moving of his will. We are moving of our own strength and striving, therefore in performance. In which case, we end up forgetting that we are reflecting God. And we start trying to replace him with ourselves, saying we are God. Now, we may not be blatantly saying that we are God, but in our actions, in our beliefs, in our ways of being, we are clearly trying to replace him. And if we are trying to replace him and he is God, what then does that make us? And so we lie to ourselves. We say that we are trusting God, that we are moving by his will. And he never asked us to that. Control tells us, if I don't hold this together, no one will. If I don't do this, it won't get done. If I don't put my hands on it, shit's gonna hit the fan. But that's not what God called us to, because image bearing actually says, I reflect his image. I do not compete with it. Ladies, hear me clearly. Competition is a masculine trait. I'm not saying competition is bad. We all have feminine and masculine in us. I'm not saying competition is bad. What I'm saying is that when we are in constant competition, either with our brothers or our sisters or our friends or our mothers, our fathers, our partners, our husbands, our wives, fill in your blank. When we are in competition, and in this case, in competition with God, we are not moving from our original design. We are stepping out of our original design in femininity. Yes, we carry masculine traits. However, in femininity, we are meant to multiply and mirror, not compete. We don't make it better, greater, bigger. We multiply it because it was already better, greater, and bigger. That is not competition. I'm not here to compete with you. And I sure as heaven am not here to compete with God. I am here to reflect his nature. You are here to reflect his nature. Control will lie to you. Control does lie to you. When it says like you are the only one that was made to do that, I say, check with God first. Check with God first. Lean on Him and not your own understanding. Because the truth that no one wants to say is that control is not strength. It's not. Control is actually fear, wearing responsibility as a costume. And the more spiritual we are, or the more enlightened we are, the easier it is to baptize control as obedience. Again, the more spiritual we are, the easier it is to baptize control as obedience, at which point we start to fast to prove discipline. Again, the key word is there, prove. If you are being called to fast, fast in accordance to what God is calling you to fast on. But fasting does not prove how disciplined you are in the word. We serve to prove how valuable we are and how much value we bring into a space. You don't need to do anything to bring value into a space. You get to be the value in the space. And we endure to prove strength. We keep ourselves in realities of suffering that God never called us to. We sacrifice the wrong things and mourn them when God never asked us to. We endure the pain, the suffering, the sadness, the grief to prove that we are strong and resilient when that is not what God is asking us to be and do. And thank God for that. And thank God that He gave us the scriptures, the words, to dismantle that mindset completely. 2 Corinthians 12:9. But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. God's power is not unlocked by your control or my control or His control or her control. It is revealed when control collapses. When I am weak, His power shows. And when I am weak, I am no longer in control. Therefore, leaning on Him, not my own strength and striving. We cannot truly be in our restoration and be refined when we are in control. And here's the part that most people aren't ready for. Most of us rely on control so that we don't have to feel. Control keeps us busy. And if we're busy, there's no room to feel. There's no time to feel. There's no space to feel. Because every space is filled with something to keep us busy. Therefore, avoiding silence, avoiding stillness, and avoiding the one thing that we were never taught to confront and feel and release, and that's grief. Grief requires surrender. There's no perfect way to grieve. There's no right way to grieve. Maybe there is one right way to grieve, and that's to grieve with God. But outside of that, grief is grief. And when we are grieving, therefore surrendering, surrender feels like death to the part of us that survived by managing everything. Surrender feels like death. It really does. This part of us that was managing everything was keeping us alive. We were able to do the things and show up in the way and be the way because we were in control. And now you're asking me to surrender that? Of course it's going to feel like grief. Of course it's going to feel like a loss. Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. My goodness, that verse alone made me want to run away from God because there's so much unknown in that. Be still and know that I am God. Notice the questions that start popping up. I vaguely remember the questions that popped up for me. Be still and know that I am God. Well, what do you mean? I know you are God, duh. But what do you mean? Be still. If I can't hear you, what do you mean? Be still. What does that mean? I picture, goodness, what is her name from the Hunger Games? Jennifer, I can't remember her name. When she came out in the hot ones and she goes, what do you mean? What do you mean? And she's like crying. And that to me is a perfect representation of be still and know that I am God, because my entire life before God, I had been managing everything. I had been in control. I was the strong one. I was the resilient one. I was the one that everyone can count on. And don't worry, Julie will get it done. Not that people were saying this, but this is what I was saying to myself. And so to be still and know that He is God then brought on the question of what is stillness? And I learned that stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is exposure. That's the truth. Stillness is exposure. And exposure always comes before restoration. It always comes before restoration. So we cannot get into restoration without being still. Luke 10:41-42. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Or indeed, only one. In that verse, I choose to believe that Martha wasn't being rebuked for serving, if we know the story. And Martha was going around trying to serve everyone. In that verse, I don't believe that Martha was being rebuked for being a hostess, for serving, for taking care of people. I believe that we get to pay attention to the energy behind it, right? We are not those Christians that are like, oh, energy. No, we're not. We recognize that energy exists. And so in recognizing that energy, and if Martha wasn't being rebuked for serving, what was she being rebuked for? Or what was she, in other words, being confronted for? Think of the energy behind it. She was being confronted for anxious striving. It was that, oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to do that. Oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to do that. I have the king in my house. And she wasn't present to what was happening there in the moment. And if she took a moment, if we take a moment to be still and see what's happening around us, then we're able to really feel what's happening. He said, be still and know that I am God. And it's in those moments when we are still that we are able to see that control doesn't just exhaust you. It makes you resentful. And to give you all a little bit of a definition, resentment is often ungrieved disappointment. Julie, how dare you call us resentful? I just did, because I see too much of it. I lived too much of it. I lived in resentment for way too long. I robbed myself of experiences and relationships and opportunities and possibilities because I was going around in anxious striving, trying to control every situation so that I didn't feel, therefore building resentment. Because there was so many things that I was disappointed about. There was so many things that I was hurting about. Yes, I was disappointed that my dad walked out on me at 3 years old. Yes, I was disappointed that my mother was incarcerated when I was 14 years old. Yes, I was disappointed that that it took so long for adults in my life to step in and help me as a child. Yes, I was disappointed that my parents didn't see that I was in pain as a kid, in emotional pain as a kid. And I started bottling all of that up, and I was resentful towards my father. I was resentful towards my mother. I was resentful towards my brothers. I was resentful towards my aunts and uncles and cousins and friends. And if I saw a family or friends that were happy and that they had both of their parents at home, especially seeing my friends getting picked up by their mom or getting picked up by their dad and then getting taken on these trips, I was freaking resentful. I was so resentful because I kept thinking to myself, what do they have that I don't have? Why do they get parents and I don't? That was ungrieved disappointment. That was resentment. And it didn't stop there. Because when I came to Jesus and I gave my life to Jesus, guess what I also put on Him? Resentment. I was so resentful towards God. I was. My goodness, was I. I was. But I couldn't grieve that because I was pretending that I was being responsible. It wasn't until I stopped pretending that I wasn't resentful and angry and hurt and disappointed. It was at that time that I was able to see that I was trying to heal without ever releasing control. And that's where many of you are at. Many of you have been trying to heal without ever releasing control. But restoration does not begin with effort. It begins with truth. And the truth is this: you were never meant to carry life alone. You were meant to lean on God and carry it with Him. Better yet, live it with Him. We were not put on this earth to live alone. Everything flourishes in community, and in community, we get belonging. But don't fool yourself and put yourself in a community that gives you belonging, that eats up your BS. Because when we do that, we're still living in control and calling it responsibility. I know that this has been one of the most confrontive episodes that I've done thus far, and so I won't leave you there because we weren't meant to carry it alone or live life alone. Here are your reflection questions for today. Question number 1: where in my life have I confused control with faithfulness? Your supporting scripture is Proverbs 3:5-6. Question number 2: what would surface if I stopped proving that I can handle it? That one might hit a lot of you in places you are ready to be hit. Let it. Let it. And your supporting scripture is Matthew 11:28-30. Let it hit you because God is holding you. Question number 3: what have I been carrying that God never assigned me to hold? And is this responsibility rooted in calling or fear? Your supporting scripture is Psalms 55:2. And the last question: am I ready to stop managing the outcome and let God meet me in the loss? What feels more threatening right now? Rest or loss? Your supporting scripture is Isaiah 30:15. Before the next episode, sit with those questions and sit with this sentence: I cannot grieve what I am still controlling. If you didn't hear any of that and it was difficult to hear it, listen to the episode again or replay this part alone. You cannot grieve what you are still controlling. I cannot grieve what I am still controlling. And you cannot be restored while pretending you were meant to hold everything together. And I cannot be restored while I pretend that I was meant to hold everything together. Control has kept you functioning, but it has also kept you from feeling and living. Functioning is not living. When we are not living, we are not feeling, we are not resting, and we are not being held. And if that's where you're at, or where we're at, or where I was at, know this, and that's that it's not failure, it's a revelation. It's a discovery. If you choose not to see it as a revelation, it's a discovery. It's a new offering of awareness, because grief doesn't mean you're going backwards, and it also doesn't mean that you're living in the past. Grieving means that something false is being released so that something true can finally breathe. Don't analyze it. Don't fix it. Just notice what the word grief stirs. In the next episode, we're not going to rush healing. We're not going to romanticize or over dramatize pain. And we are absolutely not going to mourn a version of you that Christ never asked you to become. Again, We are not going to mourn a version of you that Christ never asked you to become. What we are doing is talking about grief the way Scripture does, as a holy passage, a doorway, and a necessary part of restoration. If this episode unsettled you, if something felt exposed, if control suddenly felt heavy instead of safe, good. That means you're ready. God has said it is time. And so we let it be. Not to fix anything, not to perform surrender, just to tell the truth. We'll pick up there. So take a breath, lay it down, and I'll meet you in the grief. May God bless you. May God keep you. May He make His face to shine upon you. May you feel His arms embrace you. May you feel His presence hold you as we step into grief. I love you, my sovereignties, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.